Woo, the heat is on, baby. Boy, I had a little bit of a false start there. Suddenly I hit start broadcast and it tells me, it says, failed to go live. And I was like, oh, hell, not again. We can't have another fuck up with our live Q&A hangouts. But woo, baby. All right, we are live and we are going strong. And this time I know, unlike last month, I know that there are people watching. So I know the links worked. I got out the right links. How about that? You only screw up like that once in life, I suppose. Not that Google Hangouts is the most important thing in the world. It should be the only thing you'd screw up once for anyway. But woo, coming to you. Take a look at this. New 2600 hat. My last 2600 hat finally started to pretty much rip at the seams. It was a really, really bad situation where, like on the inside, it started going. But I had that hat, like over a decade. I don't know how long I had that hat for. My last 2600 hat. Of course, that's not the Atari 2600. That's actually 2600, the Hacker Quarterly. A lot of people, when they see me wearing this hat, and I haven't worn one in a while because I didn't have a new 2600 hat, and my old one I couldn't wear anymore because it was kind of went to shreds. A lot of people would say, oh, is that Atari or, what is that? And no, it's the Hacker Quarterly. So, you could see a lot of pictures from me years ago, online, wherever they still exist. And you can see me wearing my old 2600 hat, but finally got a new one, new fit though. I don't know. Like it surprisingly seems bigger. So either my head shrunk, which I have a hard time believing, or they actually found a bigger hat. And they used to crack a joke all the time on their store page. I think they got rid of it now, but there used to be the joke on their store page, like saying, this is one size fits all. If it doesn't fit your head, we want a picture of your head. That's one of the reasons I loved having a 2600 hat, because I actually do have a big head. And that's not like something saying that I'm brainy or a genius, not to say that I'm not, but it's not to say that. That's just to say that, well, it's hard for me to find hats. I've talked about this before. Anyway, it's nice to have a 2600 hat again. So thanks to the people at 2600 for that. Anyway, before there's a couple of preloaded questions that I have, but of course you can feel free to get in your questions in the YouTube chat, or actually looks like we're already getting joined by somebody on the Hangout. And, if Daniel's ready to go, I'm ready to take him on, unless he just wants to hang out. If he doesn't have a question to say too. I
don't know. I literally just popped in. I realized it was, what is it, 5 already?
Yeah. No worries. What's going on, man?
No, good. I don't know. Why don't you skip ahead to someone else? I need to catch myself here.
You collect your thoughts. Go for it, man. Yeah. And I'll go ahead and hit up some of these other questions here. So I'll just mute Daniel, and when he's ready, he can jump on, or I can ask him. Okay. So anyway, do get your questions into the YouTube chat if you want to do it that way, or like Daniel, you can join in the actual Hangout yourself and be on as either with video or without video and just doing audio. It's your call. So something I want to touch on quickly. I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about this unless you the listeners control this show. So if it's something you do want me to talk about, I certainly can talk about it. But regardless, this is kind of an update from what we talked about. I think it was last month's live Q&A hangout, and that has to do with the PlayStation Classic. Now, like I said, I'm not going to spend long on this. Okay, I have a whole show dedicated to video games now, so I don't really need to talk about it here on the live Q&A hangout so much. But the update that I want to give, I have finally decided, and I can't believe I'm doing this, but I am canceling my pre-order for the PlayStation Classic, okay, which is supposed to come out, I think it was December 4th, and it's $100. I am canceling it simply for the fact that now a lot of journalistic institutions, game journalist institutions, have actually gotten their hands on this thing finally. And while they like the build quality and all of that, everybody's complaining about the list of games. The list of games is pretty rough. But they are saying that like the menu design that they went with for the PlayStation Classic, where you're like selecting the games and everything, is actually really skimp, and like there's not a lot there, and there's not a lot of extra features of any kind to really take advantage of. So there's that aspect of it. But something that I want to say was GameSpot that really drove the point home for me is they said, ask yourself this question. How many of these games are you actually going to play? And when they just put it that way, like I think they're talking about Cool Borders 2 in particular, which is one of the, games that everybody's like, well, what the fuck? Like what, why aren't we doing Tony Hawk or SSX or something on that? And even though I don't know that there was an SSX game actually for PlayStation 1, but regardless, SSX Tricky or even SSX 3, I mean, just like some of the best games ever. And it was a great point to bring up. And I looked at it and I looked at the list and I looked again and I looked at the list and I said, I'm not going to fucking play any of these. Like I'm absolutely not going to bother playing these things. And to add on to that, of course, I have a soft modded PlayStation 2 where the real PlayStation 1 games that I want to play, I can play on there beautifully with perfect emulation. And that was another bit of news too that pissed me off that came out. It was found out in the code that Sony is literally using an open source PlayStation 1 emulator. I don't think they're using, I always called it XP, but what is it, like ESPX or EPSXE or whatever. It turns out they're actually just using that. Now that's hilarious on a bunch of grounds because Sony is fucking terrible as far as IP. And yet what are they doing for their own goddamn console? They're using an open source emulator that a community has been building for like over a decade. What the goddamn hell? I couldn't believe when I read that. I was like, you lazy assholes. You couldn't even make your own. I mean, and they can make emulators. Obviously, they do so for, every successive PlayStation generation to, be backwards compatible with everything else. But I'm just sick of this. And I know the only argument is that you might be able to hack it and put on whatever games you want. But then at the same time, that doesn't mean much to me because I already have a hacked PS2 that can play all the PlayStation 1 games that I want. I can even play the Japanese ones on that, which is great. Like Gradius Gaiden. I have actually a full copy of that. Not cheap either. that was an expensive proposition for me some time ago. But point being is that you're and I said this before, I think, but really I think it's just a fact. Your best bet, spend $100 buying an old PS2, get free McBoot on that thing, and you could buy hell, you could just download them, but you could buy another $100 worth of games, and you're going to get something you're going to play for the rest of your life. As to where with the PlayStation Classic, this is just this is Sony completely fucked up. Like they totally fucked up, and you would think it's something that was impossible to fuck up, but they did. The game list is bad. They're using an open source there's nothing wrong with them using an open source emulator. I mean, in some ways that's great, but for Sony, it's like, it's just hilarious for a company that is so egregious as far as like software control and how they go after quote unquote pirates and so on. And then, everything like even the hardware things that they've done where they didn't have the DualShock controllers and so on, just fuck it. So I canceled my pre-order. I'm done. And even if they do hack it, unless it like goes down to $50 or something, there's like a price drop, I just can't see bothering with it because my PlayStation 2 is a slim one. It's the same damn size as that. And I can play anything on that. Fuck, with free McBoot, I don't even just have to play PlayStation games. I can play Super Nintendo games. I could play, it's the ultimate game system, that little thing. So yeah, fuck Sony. I've been saying that for years on my show, on Sovryn Tech, but I'll say it one more time. Ever since they went after George Hotz, fuck them. So, anyway, we got Rob actually in the Hangout, ready to go with video, looking good. Rob, man, how we doing? You got a question to bring on?
Hey, how's it going? Is my audio okay?
Yeah, your audio's good. You got like a blue screen behind you? What's the deal here?
No, I'm on location, as they say.
No shit. Wow.
Yeah.
Looks great. All right.
I'm streaming from my laptop.
Hell yes, man. Wow, that laptop's got a pretty good camera. All right.
Oh, thank you.
Hell yeah. So what do you got, man?
So have you been like keeping up on the news and what's going on with Blizzard?
Well, speaking of something I might have actually pre-ordered is Warcraft 3 Reforged.
Yeah.
And I did pick that up just because, Warcraft 3. But I know about the mess with, what is it, Diablo Immortals, or what's the
right?
The yeah, that's the game.
Yeah, that's the yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's I know it's a fucking mess, and I mean there's pretty much blood on the streets as far as Basically there was a bunch of people. They had BlizzCon, which is Blizzard's own game event, which is amazing that a company can have their own game event like that, right? And they did a trailer for this mobile game, which is called Diablo Immortals, and people paid because they were getting teased that there was going to be a major Diablo announcement, right?
And these are like hardcore PC gamers.
Right. I mean, if you're going to BlizzCon, you're the real fucking deal. If you're going to a convention for a specific game company, I mean, you are hardcore. And I mean, Blizzard's games like create massive communities anyway, World of Warcraft, Overwatch, and so on, right? And even Diablo 3. And yeah, I mean, people just flipped out, and it's a very ugly situation for Blizzard, but that's just a basic rundown. But what do you got to say about it, Robin?
Oh, it's apparently it's even worse than that. Because I don't know if you've heard that, but the longtime CEO and founder Mike Morhaime is leaving the company.
Whoa!
And yeah, and word is he's being pushed out. Something else that came out here recently is that the way that Blizzard works with its employees is it actually they pay them at a lower kind of salary than is standard for the video game industry. And the reason they did this is because they had a rather generous compensation or bonus package that they got. And
it's almost like tipping.
Yeah, kind of. And I'm sure to some degree it was like performance based on, how well the game sold and whatnot. But, apparently it did very well for, pretty much all the people that worked there. And I know this because I've known some people in the past years ago that worked there. And they never complained about, the job situation. But apparently now like I said, Morhaime's leaving the company. And the word is the reason he left is because they're doing away with that compensation package and they're not really raising the salary of the employees to make up for that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so here's the thing is this is something actually you and I, Robin, have talked about either in past Q&As or we might have even brought it up on the Star Wars update. But the budgets that these major game companies, EA, Blizzard, so on, that they are putting into their games, like the amount of money they're spending to even make the games, the amount of money they have to make back is equal to the amount of GDPs of certain countries. And I mean, it's really, really ugly. And the thing is that for a while they were making that money back. Like Blizzard really was, like with World of Warcraft. I mean, that was just so hot. When you're dealing with, we're not even talking about 7 digits in players. We're talking 8 digits in the amount of players that are playing your fucking game and putting the money down. Overwatch was wildly successful for a while. Now Fortnite, I think, is kind of taking that over and so on.
Right. Apparently that's one of the reasons why the investors are kind of like pissed off. They're like, why isn't, Activision Blizzard doing Fortnite? Where's our money?
Right. And I mean, and I think that they effectively had to gamble on a mobile game like Diablo Immortals with the IAP and, with the in-app purchases and everything to even try to balance their budget sheets. I mean, and it's almost unbelievable considering the popularity of Dota and so on, which is based off of Warcraft 3. It should be seen as troubling that they've even bothered to re-release Warcraft 3. I mean, I'm not necessarily complaining, but it should be you figured they would have never touched that again, or they would have done Warcraft 4. Go ahead.
But remember they did that not too long ago with StarCraft. They remastered that.
Yeah,
not to the degree that they're doing with Warcraft 3, but it's kind of like this has been part of the package. But the other thing I wanted to bring up is with the Diablo Immortal is I mean, it really seems kind of very apparent to everybody that they're going after the Chinese market with this. Because the Chinese market is much more into mobile games, and they're co-developing it with the Chinese game who already made a mobile game that was a Diablo ripoff.
Right. Yeah. Actually, that's one of the complaints about this game is that there is the game company that Blizzard's working with actually is they had a previous game that came out, and the menu systems are almost copy and paste. They're exactly the same to him. Go ahead.
Even the visual style. I mean, if you look at the stuff that this company's done, it just seems like they've been copying the visual style of Blizzard for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, well, to finish off commenting like on your first bit that you had there about not raising employees, pay and everything. Like, I don't think they can afford it. Like, I mean, I really think it's that was kind of the end game of what I was saying is I don't think they can afford to even pay their people.
I don't know. But I mean, the thing is like, they had that merger with Activision, and it wasn't that Activision bought Blizzard. It was the other way around. Blizzard bought Activision.
Yeah.
Because they were so flush with cash from World of Warcraft and everything else.
Yeah, well, I mean, and then Activision's in trouble because Call of Duty is not doing the numbers that it used to do, and Call of Duty is, I mean, everybody's you have these. I don't want to call them startups. I call them upstarts. Where it's like where it's disruptive. You have Fortnite, you have whatever PUBG. I don't know, whatever the fuck the other ones are.
Right.
That they come out of nowhere and they thrash. World of Warcraft, your Call of Duties, just about any other multiplayer game. They just kill it. So. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Warcraft 3 thing is definitely a cash grab. The Diablo Immortals thing is definitely a cash grab. The fact that they didn't show off anything for Diablo 4, I don't think they could. Like, I don't think they have the money to even make the game. That's my opinion on it.
I mean, it's weird though, because I mean, I don't know. It just they seem to have gotten into this situation because they did start to focus too much on multiplayer. And they do still have, like, obviously, if you're holding BlizzCon and you're still selling out tickets the minute they go on sale, then that hardcore, like, PC single-player audience is still there. So...
Yeah, I mean, this is, really, they totally fucked up. I mean, like, everybody's pretty much lost faith in this company, it sounds like to me.
Yeah. It doesn't That's kind of seems to be the way with, like, all of our favorite video game companies from the past. You look at Valve, you look at Blizzard, I mean, it seems like they all end up becoming, the golden child to becoming and turning into, the evil monster,
Yeah, well, what I mean, I really honestly I blame Electronic Arts because Electronic Arts in the aughts started buying up like every independent PC game house or even console game house. Like they bought Origin.
No, they're still doing it.
Right. I mean, like they bought so many of these little companies, and when you lose all of those little indie developers, and I mean, and I don't just mean like indie developers like the guy that can make Fez or Super Meat Boy or something, but like indie developers that could actually get Mark Hamill to be in their fucking game, like Wing Commander and Origin, right? So that kind of more upstart kind of company, when all those disappear, like, like the competition's not there, and the innovative ideas that only developers with, to put it in a Rockyism, only developers with the eye of the tiger, not the heart of the tiger, but the eye of the tiger, where they're hungry. They're the only ones that could do it. And these companies are not hungry. In fact, they're fat, and I don't mean that would,
Well, it's good that you bring that up, because I don't know if you heard, another thing that happened this week was that Microsoft came along and bought Obsidian Entertainment and Exile, who were making, the Wasteland sequels.
Right.
And Obsidian does the, like the Pillars Journey, and they did Fallout New Vegas, and
which they were licensing out through Paradox, or maybe I know the game. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, Pillars of Eternity was their own IP, I think.
Okay, I thought they licensed that out through Paradox, but I mean, I'm very familiar with the first game. I haven't played the second one.
Yeah.
And the Wasteland series, Wasteland 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. I actually I am a pre-order backer for Wasteland 3. I mean, that was like 2-3 years ago that I laid down the $60 on that.
Yeah, well, it's a Microsoft game now.
So, okay. Yeah. Now, not to say that Microsoft can't treat gamers with respect. It can, and it might do better than some of these other companies as far as that goes. But I think a second point to bring up in all of this, and now it seems true for the gaming industry as much as it is true for the rest of the tech industry, is that, like I can have all of this knowledge of what the tech giants and game companies and everything else were doing in the 1990s all the way up until 2010, 2012, or really, in my opinion, all the way up until about 2015. I can have all of that knowledge in the world, that none of it honestly means anything now. Like, these are completely different companies. Apple's a different company. Microsoft's a different company. I mean, every one of them. Well, the only company that stayed true to its principles, and that's probably why it's winning, is Amazon. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. But then look at the game companies. Blizzard is fucking obviously not the company for the hardcore gamer anymore. I mean, that's order of the day when you look at Hearthstone, Overwatch, and Diablo Immortals, and so on. So it's. Yeah, we are in a new world with all of this, and these companies are doing completely, they do things that we would never expect from them. And I wish the gaming industry wasn't affected by that, but it is, and it sucks. So yeah, interesting story to bring up. Did you have anything else, Robin?
No, that's it, man.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I couldn't believe it with the Diablo Immortals thing. I mean, I've said this so many times. You don't. The one segment of the population, the one demographic that you absolutely do not fuck with, because they will hurt you. And I almost mean that in a very literal sense, is the PC master race. You never ever fuck with PC gamers. Like, we're talking about, if we looked at raw computing power, they probably control the largest amount of raw computing power in the world. They have that alone, to say nothing of their passion. Like, I mean, they are just, PC gamers, like the really hardcore ones, are just wildly nuts. I've congratulated them in the past, because I think they're the only thing keeping us from a cloud computing future, and they are the thing that is going to allow us to have a peer-to-peer future. Just look at, what's mining all of that crypto right now? Well, it's all PC gaming equipment. I mean, it is just such an important segment. You never want to piss them off, and Blizzard, boy, did they fuck up.
Well, there's been some pushback. I mean, from the gaming journalists, a lot of them are kind of pushing this narrative. Oh, these PC gamers are so entitled, and they're so toxic, and certainly there's a degree of that. You go on to any online game and listen to voice chat or stuff, like, you're going to run into that kind of stuff. But I mean, like, they are just kind of like painting the entire, like you say, PC master race with a broad brush there, and yeah.
I mean, yes, there's toxicity. I won't deny that.
Right.
But there is, a lot of what the PC gaming community says that's not boasting, because it's not boasting if you can back it up. I mean, these are genuinely, like, in my opinion, if we're just looking at intellectually and so on, we are talking about some of the most badass people on the planet. And I really, really mean that. I mean, like, you cannot write these people off. Are they entitled? Bet your ass. They're elite. They're fucking elite. I mean, they just are. And again, but it's not like necessarily entitled if they fucking earned it. And baby, when you're putting together, a $5,000 desktop, and you're customizing your own mechanical keyboard and all that stuff, you get to call some shots, and you have some say in what's going on. That kind of passion should never ever be disregarded or insulted, in my opinion. I mean,
and Blizzard wouldn't have made as much money as it has was it not for the the PC community.
Sure. Or how about, I mean, just the PC modders. Like, nobody would give a shit about Warcraft 3 if it wasn't for the mod scene. At least not today. They wouldn't give a shit. And effectively, that's what they did, is they just modded, Reforged is a mod of Warcraft 3. So,
right. Well, and Dota 2.
Oh, exactly. One of the biggest games in the world is Warcraft 3. Yeah, that's why I say with Dota, it's almost weird. Why would they want to, like, fuck with, like, try and take any money off of Dota's? I don't know. Anyway, it's
well, that's because Dota's with Steam. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, even then, like, I don't know, it seems harmful, like, to the entire esports scene, but that's a whole other fucking thing.
Well, that seems to be like the kind of like overriding theme here is that all these companies aren't like real. They don't have a long-term game plan.
No. Yeah, there's something very weird. Boy, I got a whole conspiracy I could get into about that. But
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, it has to do with, I'll hint at this. I'll just say with this, and maybe if we have more time in this episode, I'll get to it later on.
Well, you got Game Talk too. So, I mean,
Yeah. But the rapid amount of major game sales, as in like Kmart shopping blue light special sales, okay, where it's 50% off or whatever. The frequency and the incredible amount of that is very troubling to me in a lot of ways. So, but I'm just going to hint it at that, and maybe I'll get to it in a future later on in this episode or in another episode. I'll talk about it. So, but there's something odd there. But anyway, Robin, man, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, it's always good talking to you, man.
brother. So we'll do the Star Wars update later this month. We'll get that all scheduled up. But cool. So anyway, Daniel, if you're available, why don't you go ahead and get on in, man?
Yeah. So actually, all of this talk of gaming reminded me that I wanted to ask about this before.
Sure.
I think and I might have mentioned I'm not a gamer, and I kind of never really have been.
Right.
So this is all new to me, but.
Oop, I think I might have lost you there, Daniel.
What's worse is that I think I've been living under a rock for lack of a better phrase.
Okay.
Over the last God knows how long, because not too long ago I found out that there's like Major League Gaming. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but you've got like people who are actually like playing, and like people are like, it's like a spectator sport. People are watching people play
esports.
Video games to the tune of like millions of dollars. Like people are making millions of dollars, like professional athletes by playing video games. And actually, I remember where I came across this. It was a Let's Talk Bitcoin episode probably a couple months ago. They were talking about like utilizing blockchain for in-game purchases, or something like where you can buy stuff for your game, but you get to keep it because you can port it between games, and you actually have the stuff living on a blockchain, and using smart contracts in that way. I don't remember who the guest was, but I'm pretty sure Adam B. Levine was interviewing this guy, and they were talking about it. And I just found it interesting because I think at that point it's when they were mentioning that like you've got these teenagers who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month just with the stuff. So first of all, I mean, the biggest shock was that I just never even knew of the subculture existing, or that this happened. But I guess the other question is, how is this such a thing? Like, I'm genuinely confused. Like, and is it really the case where you can actually sort of have, whether it's with blockchain solutions or otherwise, where you can actually have a way that you interact, like, because I think one of the use cases that I heard is that people are interacting with the players, like they're staking their coins to give watching extra power, so that they actually.
Oh, you keep cutting out, Daniel, but yeah, we're losing you there.
I guess I was just. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Okay, you're back now.
Stupid underground.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess my point is, like, with contract where fans can interact with the people that they're watching, with their superstar gamer, where they like stake their coins to increase this guy's health, or increase this guy's power, and
sure,
they throw them their sword or something. Now you can use my sword for 20 seconds or something like that. So now it becomes like a team sport where the superstar game player is also utilizing his fans abilities and stuff. I don't know, it's not really a question, it's more along the lines of like, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, thanks for muting there. Yeah. So this is a big deal, because this is one of the industries where people were kind of waiting for blockchain to become a thing, partly because, a lot of these games, especially your massive multiplayer online, your MMOs, your massive multiplayer online games, have in-game currency. And so wouldn't it just make sense to like secure that, with blockchain, which would make sense because, the aforementioned Diablo that we were talking about earlier that Blizzard made, back in the day, back in the 90s, like used to do what's called duping, where, all of these, like you get this potion or you get this and that, whatever you'd find in some dungeon. And there was a way to cheat the game, even an online version of it, to where you could create more of it. And that was called duping, as in duplicating. Okay. So if you could secure the currency and or not even just the currency, but even in-game items and all that with blockchain, that would be a very handy thing. That would be a way to eliminate some cheating, that goes on with these games. Now, this concept of esports, which is what you were describing. This has been around, I want to say it really hit stride back in like maybe 2007, around when a game called Counter-Strike really first hit off. Now, it was there before. There have always been online communities for this sort of stuff, but where it became really white hot, where it became a really big deal and suddenly people started paying attention, was very much like with Counter-Strike. There used to be a guy, I can't remember his name. He was really famous for Doom 3. Doom 3 was one of the games where this became a thing. And in fact, this guy, it's John something. I can't think of his name, but this guy, like, he got like licensing deals and merchandising deals, like with Creative, that makes Sound Blaster and all that. Like, you would get like his keyboard, and you could, it'd have his name on it and his signature and everything, just like, your various sports players, like, be like wearing Air Jordans or something, right? But it'd be for PC gaming. So this has been going on for, at least a decade, but I think significantly longer. The aforementioned StarCraft, we have a million situations where, like in Korea, actually, in South Korea, I suppose I should say, in South Korea, StarCraft is like baseball over there. And there are two cable networks, major cable networks, that all those two cable networks do in South Korea is they play tournaments. They show tournaments of the game StarCraft. And StarCraft came out, 1996, something like that. I mean, it's crazy. In fact, a guy died. This was a very famous story from a few years ago. A Korean gentleman died because he wouldn't stop playing. He wouldn't go to the bathroom to stop playing, and he fucking died from it. Like, I mean, it's really madness. And I think that, speaking of EA, this is all it's amazing how all this is kind of coming together. And I think I've talked about this before on Sovryn Tech. There was classic, way back in the 90s, there was a classic Electronic Arts ad campaign, that would be on television at the time because the internet wasn't even so much of a thing. And the ad campaign had a very simple slogan, kind of like Nike has "Just Do It." For them, it was this concept of, like the commercial would start off with, and then they kind of made commercials that played off of it. The commercial would start off with, thousands of years ago, one person or one human said to another human, "I'm better than you and I can prove it." And their EA's claim was, at the time, Electronic Arts was best known for their sports games. EA's claim was that that's how the very concept of sports in general started, is that one human said to another human, "I'm better than you and I can prove it." And it's such a simple concept, and maybe it's something that comes out of like that Jared Diamond would say or whoever, but I think there might be some truth to that. That the very first, like sporting competitions of any kind, caveman games or whatever the fuck it would ended up being, would actually be based upon the fact that one person looked at another person and said, "I can do that better than you and I can prove it." And then it became competition. And I think anything that allows for that statement to be made in a person's head, "I'm better than you at that and I can prove it," can become a sport, and it becomes a sport. And there was definitely a concerted effort by the PC gaming community itself, not even from on high, not even from the developers and so on. There was a real push within the PC gaming community, especially when platforms like Valve's Steam, or there used to be a bunch of other ones too, GameSpy, there used to be a few different ones. Once those platforms came and gamers had like their own little niches where they could, and certainly Blizzard had Battle.net and so on, there was that from grassroots desire, okay, how can we make money doing this? Like, we're awesome at these games, we love these games, this is what we do, how do we start all making money off of this? And so there was a grassroots push to create effectively esports. And again, when you have people that are as passionate as PC gamers are, like I was describing earlier, they're going to make it happen. And then eventually you get, really what put esports over the top is that people started gambling. People started placing bets just like in horse races. And that's another aspect where cryptocurrency would come in and would take it very seriously, is the gambling aspects of this. Now, the idea of, that interview that Adam had now, and also understand, like, Adam B. Levine, who I love. We have a mutual respect for each other. Adam B. Levine, he used to do a video game podcast. Like, that's his Twitter handle still, right? Gamer Andy. He loves video games, or he used to anyway. It used to be a major part of his life, if not the biggest part of his life. And, so anyway, but like this idea of allowing blockchain to, and again, blockchain can help verify what's going on, so you can't like cheat the game, but allowing blockchain to empower, say, a certain player by you putting your money down and all that. I mean, that's a mixture of gambling, and then also that allows for all kinds of things. I think that's a brilliant concept, frankly. I mean, not that I'm one for gambling, but personally, I don't care what other people do, but yeah, I think it is kind of a brilliant concept as far as that goes. So yeah, I mean, it was really just a matter of time once the community actually wanted it. And another thing that put it over the top was once consoles, like home consoles, the Xbox, PlayStation, so on, once those got to the point where they were taking advantage of the internet, where they had internet connectivity and they could do multiplayer, that's also another part that made it blow up, because that made esports become a thing. Because before, you had a barrier to entry into esports, and that is, like we were talking about earlier, you're going to lay down $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, if not $10,000 on a desktop machine that can make sure you are getting, the absolute best pixels, on the screen, and you can frag somebody faster than anybody else, blah, 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 blah. Even though really it kind of always came down to, your internet connection. But, you'd have to put down that amount of money, at least in the 4 digits, to be able to even be a part of this new sport. With home consoles, oh no, you can be a part of the sport for the low price of $200 to $300. And so that's another thing that really put it over the top as far as like how it ended up becoming a thing. And that's a far more recent development, I think. Like the first home console game that was a big deal with multiplayer was probably a game called it's called SOCOM, that was for the PlayStation 2, and even that required you to get some extra hardware for the PlayStation 2, and that would have been, I guess, maybe 15 years ago when that came out. But it took a long time. Really, the Xbox 360, I think, might have the most credit for and Halo, the Halo series, for creating esports, or at least on multiplayer competition at the home console level. But then you had a much lower barrier to entry to get into that, and so then it pops even more. But this is definitely, I think it's still really a nascent industry. So if you haven't heard of it, it's kind of like cryptocurrency, right? Like cryptocurrency is just now where it's in the news, kind of in any kind of news, just about every day. It took 10 years, right? Because since like 2009, I think with esports, it's in some ways it's very much the same thing. So don't feel too bad. Like you weren't under too big of a rock or anything. It
certainly feels like it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no worries. But did you have any comments on that, Daniel?
No, I mean it is. I think it's very interesting that these, as these technologies come in, and there is a sort of an industry that's been, for lack of a better phrase, waiting for this technology to arrive.
Yeah.
How quickly.
Use all available doors, please. All available doors.
How quickly. Use all available doors, please.
Yeah. Always use all available doors. Yeah.
You'd be surprised when it's winter outside in Boston. Yeah, so I think it's interesting to see how quickly this is actually going to unfold, because like you said, okay, yeah, it took 10 years, 15 years or whatever to get to where it was. Like going to the next stage, is it kind of like singularity? Is it like the exponential increase where it's actually going to take like 5 years to get to the next stage with these new technologies to enable something that the gamers have really wanted all of this time. Everyone, at the end of the day, everyone wants community. Everyone wants to connect with one another, and what better way to connect? Because it's one thing where you're playing one-on-one. It's another thing where you've got massively.
Yeah, I'm losing you again.
It's another thing where you can. Oh shit.
Yeah. That's all right. So, yeah, no, you're totally right. People want community. And, one of the things, and this is why I read gaming magazines and gaming news for a long time. This changed after Gamergate. But what was true for a very long time was, like the only thing that's on the line in gaming is the game. As to where any other kind of industry, it feels like your ethics have to come into play. As to where in the gaming industry, they necessarily don't. Like, they always say, like, at work, you shouldn't talk about religion or politics or this or that. That way everybody can get along peaceably. for the longest time with video games, like it was the place where that shit just didn't even really come up. Like nobody cared, you know, you're just there for the game and you rocked it. And I think that can still be true, but yeah, people look for community, and I think this is a way to get it. And a lot of these games have really cleaned up to where everybody can kind of play them. And the other interesting thing too is that, you know, the mobile phone, like gaming on mobile, I think that's ridiculous and impractical. But I am obviously, you know, the odd man out as far as that goes. There are a lot of people, like right now, all the advertisements for the new Galaxy phone are all about like this, you know, young black woman or your black gal, you know, playing, like being a gamer and everything. And she's doing it all on her smartphone, and she's like going to go make $1 million and whatever doing it. So, I mean, there's a real push for this, you know, no doubt. I mean, when one of the biggest phone companies in the world is trying to sell you their new flagship, and they're selling it simply based around the concept of playing video games on it, you know, and going to esports with that. Yeah, this is a big deal. You know, I mean, its time is here. No doubt about that. So anyway, Daniel, thank you so much for that. I mean, this is, or yep. If you got more, go for it.
No, just thank you. I got tech. I got tech journalism, history, gaming, and ethics at the end. So I got my fill.
All right, everything Sovryn Tech likes to provide. So yeah, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna let's see. Just John Wendell, that was the guy that I was thinking of. Yes, John Wendell. This guy was like the Michael Jordan of esports. Yeah, Fatality, that was his nickname. And you could get like the Fatality. In fact, I had it, the Fatality Edition, Xi-Fi, Xi-Fi, Xi-Fi Sound Blaster, back when sound cards were actually a thing. Of course, those days have kind of long gone. But yeah, well put. So nope. I want. What do you got, Robin?
They're not. I mean, this is bizarre because his brand is still around.
That's so weird,
like, isn't it? Isn't it? Because like he hasn't been playing professionally for like almost more than a decade, I think.
I mean, I remember back, 10 years ago, like we used to rip on him. I mean, like great, good for him, but we ripped on him because we're like, well, who the hell? Who makes a big deal out of playing Doom 3? Like, who the fuck is doing competitive Doom 3? Yeah. But, I mean, great game, but what the fuck?
But yeah, they still sell Fatality branded products from Creative Labs. There's a motherboard maker, I think it's AS Rock, and Monster, not the drink, but the cables. The cable company.
Big thick gauge cables. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they all sell Fatality branded stuff, and it's so bizarre to me because he's like, I mean, I'm not ripping on the guy because he had a great career, but he's a has-been in terms of video games. Right. Yeah. He's retired.
I mean, no, I know. And like I don't think he ever made a big deal or like ever made a splash on anything outside of Doom 3. And again, like who the hell gives a shit about, I mean, I love that game, but who gives a shit about the multiplayer on it? You know, that's it's so weird. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah. I mean, that really took me on memory lane when you mentioned it there in the YouTube chat. Just unbelievable. But I mean, it is interesting, and the history that's going to get written about esports, well, and blockchain too. I can't wait for those books in the next 10 years that are going to drop, because I mean, there are stories to tell. I think there's people getting, and I mean, I'm not saying this is a good thing, it absolutely isn't, but there are people who are getting offed, as in killed, in relation to esports. There are people who are getting offed in relation to blockchain. Some very famous cases within blockchain where it seems, well, people are saying they committed suicide. I don't know how much that was a suicide. Just thinking of some offices in Singapore. But anyway,
yeah. Well, I mean, from that you had the whole phenomenon now of like swatting, and that's like
right.
There was a big case about one guy. I don't think he was sentenced, but like they pretty much they did a plea deal with them, and it's something for like 20 years. And they found out this guy had been like swatting like just hundreds of people. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with, like just to fuck with them while they're in the middle of a tournament.
Right. Or, right. And he was doing as a service. So other gamers would come to him and say, hey, swat my competitor.
Yeah.
And he would go do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point that it got to, at the same time, like, and I think I was talking about this. Oh, I guess maybe I was talking about it on the Wednesday Q&A this week, and maybe somewhat on a Sovryn Tech Prime somewhere. But now gaming. I said I used to read gaming journalism a lot. Now I generally don't. I mean, unless the story really just kind of like crosses my bow somehow. Because ever since Gamergate, like now, ABC, NBC, whatever media mogul out there knows that they can take advantage of these stories within gaming, and they can, sometimes I think it's, to use the term, sometimes I think it's AstroTurf, like, or what I call cheap heat, where it's something that they're almost like generating. I mean, Gamergate was legit, Brianna Wu, people were getting death threats. I'm not saying those weren't real. They were. But at the same time, there was a lot of it, and a lot of the continued concentration on it, I think, was to, what we would say 30 years ago, to sell newspapers.
Yeah, well, there's far too many hot takes in gaming journalism as it is.
Yeah, and it's just it's so crazy. So, all right, well, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. And there was a question in the YouTube chat that I'm going to get to here. So, and then thanks again for jumping on there, Robin. So feel free to hang out. If we, something comes up that you want to comment on, go for it. So anyway, this is from the YouTube chat. Hey, Brian, do you have any thoughts on the privacy of startpage.com? I've been using them lately since becoming dissatisfied with DuckDuckGo results. Thanks. No, I don't. There's no Startpage. What's the company? XQuick or whatever. Startpage and DuckDuckGo, I really see them as kissing cousins. I mean, like one, you could say that Startpage is better because it's using Google search, and DuckDuckGo has Bing as its back end. And if you get better results with Startpage, that's fine. I mean, Startpage is still anonymizing everything that's going on. They don't make it like Disconnect.me used to allow for that too, and they've run into issues with that, but I think they were trying to like integrate too much into the browser to make that happen. I don't, other than one's own personal taste on what results they get. I have no beef with Startpage. I've even talked to the people at Startpage in the past, and they are, it's a small company that just gives a damn. And I mean, they really give a damn about privacy. There's no real, in my opinion, there's no advantage one over the other. DuckDuckGo is a little more like community oriented, where they sponsor a lot of things within like the privacy community and so on. So I think that might, push me a little more towards them. But what results you get are up to your own personal threshold as far as what works for you. But I don't see any advantage over one over the other, in my opinion. So nothing wrong with Startpage, nothing wrong with DuckDuckGo, other than, you might like the results you get with one more than the other, to answer that question. So great question to bring up. That comes up a lot. A lot of people ask me, like, what do you think of Startpage compared to DuckDuckGo and so on? Yeah, both of them are fine. So, but I'm always happy to, kind of redress, that situation, because you never know, at some point, one of them might do something that's really, really fucked up. So yeah, no problem. The person just said, thanks for answering my question. Not a problem at all. Let's see. So I'm going to look into I like I said, I had a couple of preloaded questions. You might notice, if you're watching the video, you might notice I have fingerless gloves on. We in New Hampshire, we are definitely in Ice Planet 0 right now. And it gets cold, and these are my classic. They got a nice little Baphomet symbol on, or I'm sorry, no, it's not. It's an ibex, but there's a nice little Baphomet symbol on them. And I wear these, when I'm in the studio and working when it's pretty cold out. So if you're wondering what the deal is with those, that's all that it is. I didn't hurt my hands or anything. I'm not wearing a cast or anything along those lines. Okay, let's go to Patreon, where a couple questions were asked. These are the ones that were sort of preloaded. Here it is. I know you signed up for Asgardian citizenship a while back. I'd like your thoughts on the new citizenship fee of 100 euros per year. So first off, I got the email. So Asgardia, for those that don't know, I think you can go to Asgardia, and that's spelled just like the Norse mythological land. Well, Asgard is pretty much, yeah. Anyway, we won't go into that. I could end up talking about that for an hour. Asgardia, if you go to asgardia.space, and that's like dot and then the word space. It is the first quote unquote space nation, or at least that's the claim. I'm sure other people tried, but anyway, asgardia.space, you can go there to find out more about this. And they are trying to build a space station and so on. and we're already like signing up for citizens and everything. It was something that was being pushed by a Russian billionaire. I did sign up for it very early on. I talked about it, as this person who asked the question obviously knows. I talked about it, boy, it was a couple of years ago on Sovryn Tech. And in fact, when you go to zog.email, if you go to the About Me page of About Me, underneath my picture is my Asgardian ID. Okay, so I'm an anarchist, no doubt about it. Asgardia, like, it is a nation, like they plan on having laws, a government, and so on. Okay. Do I agree with that? Of course I don't. But for me, supporting this, or not supporting it, but like kind of being a part of it and at least getting eyes on it, is a way of doing what I think is absolutely necessary for humanity. And that is, we need to have the capability to live somewhere, to be somewhere, to get somewhere where no government has purchase, and where, where lethal enforcement can't be enforced, can't get put down. And pretty much there's nowhere on Earth, other than, unless we did undersea colonies, which could get interesting, there's nowhere on Earth where we can really get away from the threat of lethal force. In space, I think we can. I think that's very, very possible. I think in space, I think the rules very much change. Okay. And I don't mean the rules of like, there's this law and this law. I mean the rules of like almost of the human condition, or the way that we're used to operating, changes dramatically when we end up going to space, because at that point, almost everything, it's almost a survival situation again. You can thrive within it, but there's so many things that require such knowledge and education and fine detail. I mean, like, everything's on the line pretty much at all times. And that changes, I think, the way that we would end up interacting. I don't know that when you go to space, that capitalism is the order of the day. Now, certainly Asgardia might seem to want to think that that's so, but when what it takes to survive, the interplay, the community aspect of what it takes to survive just on some little space station. I think in some ways the rules of the human condition change when that happens. So that's why I'm kind of excited about Asgardia, even though, no, it is far from perfect. It is not anarchist. It is not this or that. But if it's a stepping stone to get to the stars, for the rest of us to get to the stars, I don't believe in incremental things, but also I think setting up a space nation is not an incremental step of any kind. That's a marvel. It's a fucking marvel. I mean, like, that's incredible that we could even pull that off. And I do think that we can. In fact, I was watching a tremendous, I'll get to this question, but I was watching a tremendous documentary that is going to be a part of a future user podcast that was all about, what's called Project Orion. And Project Orion was this project in, I guess, the 60s, maybe 50s and 60s, that Freeman Dyson, who, certainly one of the most brilliant people to ever walk the earth, Freeman Dyson was spearheading for the U.S. government, and they were literally going to create this massive multi-ton like starship that was going to be propelled by, atomic bombs. And it was going to be powered, obviously by atomics and so on. And this is definitely during, America's kind of a atomic age where everybody thought, from Ford to, the company that built your house and would try to sell you a microwave later on, in the future, like, everything was going to be powered by, nuclear energy or something, right? Like, even had the Ford Nucleon, if you remember that. So anyway, Project Orion, very real. And I mean, it's a fascinating a bit of history to read about. But bottom line being is that, we could, like, they figured it out. They figured it out 50 years ago. How can humanity get to the stars? They know how. Like, I mean, and we're talking about some of the most brilliant people to ever walk the earth. They figured it all out, and they wanted to figure. In fact, it's beautiful to listen to. Yeah, U.S. government stuff. I get you. Okay, but these scientists were the very same scientists that may have helped out with the development of the atomic bomb, and I think that they, well, to use a conventional term or phrase, they had a come to Jesus moment, shall we say, where they saw the pictures, they saw the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they said, no, there's got to be a way that this technology can be used to create life and not to take it. And I believe that those scientists really felt that conviction. And I think that things like Project Orion, where they could take humanity to the stars and do the ultimate in survival and life giving to humanity in the abstract and in whole, which is turn humanity into a multi-planet species to make sure that what happens on one planet doesn't entirely, like say something terrible happens on Earth, doesn't wipe out the entirety of humanity. It's such an important thing to do. I am far from the first person to, suggest that, obviously. And I would also argue, as would many other people in the, in the, shall we say, the space field, that humanity is meant to be a multi-planet species. I could talk more about that, but that's not exactly what we're here for, with discussing this question. But bottom line being is that, this is not a pipe dream. This is not, this is never going to happen. No, it fucking can. We already have the plan. I mean, granted, with Project Orion, some of those plans are still top secret, but we know that they licked it. They figured it out. There's a great book that goes into much more detail than the BBC documentary that was made about it. And this documentary came out in like 2004. There's a great book by Freeman Dyson's son, George Dyson, that's all about Project Orion, that it lays it all out. I mean, it's just a fascinating read. And maybe one of the most interesting things is that, every time you hear, and this gets to like why we need to be a multi-planet species, every time you hear that, there's this asteroid that's going to, come smacking through our solar system and fuck, it's going to hit the Earth and we're done in 20 years. And how many times have those stories come up? And they have. And what is usually the conclusion that the New York Times or the Washington Post or who the fuck ever? The conclusion usually is, well, you know what? Like we don't have a plan for this. We can't solve this. We can't do anything about this. But that's bullshit. In fact, if you watch the documentary, they talk about it, that Project Orion could absolutely stop just about any asteroid from destroying the Earth. Like it could solve all of that, not just because we could get to other planets, but because it could take on the asteroid and it has the power to do that. Like, I mean, just the raw amount of thrust that this thing and the size of this starship that they were planning back in the 60s. I mean, and it's totally real. This isn't conspiracy. It's a fucking fact. It is amazing to consider. And to see in play. So don't, anytime they tell you, oh shit, there's an asteroid coming, don't worry about it. Like, believe me, if there's any conspiracy, it's that the news won't tell you about shit that they must know about. I mean, if the fucking BBC does a documentary about it, I would assume the Washington Post has a goddamn clue about Project Orion. Okay. There are solutions to these things when this shit happens. The world is really not going to end. So anyway, I mean, now there's problems with Project Orion, sure. But I mean, if we're talking about like an asteroid hitting the Earth, we'll I mean, people are going to take care of it. Anyway, getting way off track. Bottom line being is that Asgardia, I think, is entirely possible. I don't think it's crazy. One could look at this. So they came out with an email a couple of weeks ago that said, and I got the email as well, that said there's going to be a citizen fee for, I think if you're like in the first 100,000 citizens, you don't have to pay it. And, there are already people like, technically I'm a citizen of Asgardia, even though Asgardia doesn't exist yet. Not that I give a rat's ass about being considered a citizen of anything. But there's like $100 fee. Now I didn't realize that it said it was yearly. I missed that part, that it was a yearly fee. If it's a yearly fee, I don't like that. That's a tax pretty much in a very real way, or it's like a homeowners association fee or something, which, I mean, maybe that makes it a little more palatable when you describe it that way. But yeah, I'm not so much a fan of that. If it's a one-time fee, that is very different. Okay. And the reason I say that that's different is, we're talking about gaming throughout a lot of this episode. Let me give you an example where I think one-time fees are a wonderful thing. On Steam, which is the largest gaming platform in the world, just bar none. Nothing else even comes remotely close to the amount of users that Steam has. Okay. On Steam, for the longest time, you create a Steam account totally for free. And, for some people it's a great thing because there's actually free games available on Steam. You never had to pay a dime. But then what would happen is you'd get a lot of spammers and you'd get a lot of fake accounts and so on built on Steam. And instead of saying, okay, all of you, Steam users, give us your phone number and blah, 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 so that we can verify it's you or something, what they did was they said that if you have to get us, I think what they ended up saying was, anybody could kind of create a Steam account or something, but to get past a certain level where you could use the chat features, which is how people were spamming you, you had to spend at least $5. And I don't think that's outrageous. Like, if you can't, I mean, even a 4-year-old, I really think can spend $5 on a game on Steam. Not that necessarily a 4-year-old would be on there, but you get my point. And that almost single-handedly wiped out this entire spamming problem on Steam just by putting in this effectively $5 paywall. And it's a one-time fee, though, of just, you can make the account, but you got to spend $5 on that account, and then you can take advantage of everything that's available on Steam. I talked about that on Sovryn Tech when they announced it. It was probably 3, maybe 4 years ago, and I said, that's brilliant. I was like, no, absolutely do that. I think that's wonderful to do that. And it really solved that problem. And I dare say it does a much better job of solving that problem than it does with how Facebook or Twitter or any of these other platforms try to solve the problem of fake accounts, and so on. And the problem with asteroids isn't diverting them, it's spotting them. Yeah, good point. That is a problem too. But even if if we did see it coming fast, I think Project Orion could help out with that. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So if it's a one-time fee with Asgardia, then that wouldn't be so bad, because you want to make sure that people are actually passionate about this and it's not just a bunch of bullshitters signing up for it. Okay. You want to show legit numbers and that people are willing to put a little skin in the game. I have no problem with that. I think that that's fine. And if, one could see it as a tax, or like I said, someone could see if it's a yearly thing, or someone could see it as, membership dues, or, your homeowners association fee, that pays for getting the lawn mowed and all that stuff. Right. However, there's ways to make it, sit better in your stomach, when you think about it. I'm not going to necessarily argue for that. I would argue against a yearly fee. I think a one-time fee is a wonderful idea. Is it for Asgardia to make some money so that they can build the shit? Well, yeah, sure, probably, but so what? Like at the same time, I think it still makes sense, like whether they needed the money or not. This is a good idea to create some kind of entry fee that makes sure the people you're talking to and that you're reaching out to and that are, making decisions or whatever else, again, that they have real skin in the game and that it's a real person. And €100, whatever that adds up to in dollars, like that's not anything too crazy. Again, I don't know how I feel about the yearly fee so much, but I'll have to look back at that material. But I'll say all of this because if other Sovryn Tech listeners are actually citizens of Asgardia as well, if it's a yearly fee, let's make a stink about it, and just say, no, you can do the one-time fee, but let's not do the yearly. So yeah, because the idea is that Asgardia would, whatever industry they would create while in space, and there's certainly plenty to do, that would more than pay for, whatever is necessary with that station and so on, and to make it a thing. So yeah, this doesn't bother me too much. And honestly, like, who am I to tell them they can't do this? I might, if it were a yearly thing and like it's in perpetuity, I might walk away from it, but then, that's just me. And who am I to tell them they can't, have that yearly fee or something? Again, if anything, you could just see it as membership dues, really, if you wanted to think about it that way. And I don't think that's crazy, because I think that's a way of making sure that you are keeping passionate and educated people involved. It's just one method for that. And yeah, it makes them some money too. Sure. But what a surprise, right? Because it's going to cost money to make this fucking space station. Okay. It's not going to get built on hopes and dreams as much as it may be built on hopes and dreams at the same time. You're still going to need some money for it. So anyway, we are at the 6 o'clock mark. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. This has been another one. Wow. We talk a lot of gaming, but there's always interesting news going on, with gaming, especially as late, but really it's been going on for a while. Of course, if you have other questions, you can preload them for, when December comes around. We're probably going to do the December one pretty early in the month, just so you know. But you can, get those questions ready, start thinking of them, get ready for the December live Q&A hangout. If you don't want it to be all about gaming, you can come on the show, or you can get in the YouTube chat and you can ask whatever you want to ask. And we'll make it a thing. And, I try to get to everything I can. And, I'll tell you this, I love talking gaming. Obviously, I've said this many times in the show. I am three things. First, I'm a gamer. Second, I'm a historian, armchair. Third, I'm a tech journalist, and in that order, like those are the orders of importance in my head. So obviously I have no problem talking about gaming, but if you have non-gaming questions, I might give those a little precedence. So anyway, especially now that I have a whole podcast that's just all about games, which I love. I'm so excited for what we've got cooking up for Sovryn Tech over the next while, really. And User Podcast, the second episode is coming in hot. And actually, Project Orion might end up coming up at some point on the, or I think I said that earlier, that it would come up on the User Podcast. It definitely won't be in episode 2, but it will be a very serious subject, to come up in a future User Podcast. And I appreciate everyone, that had such kind words for the first episode. Let's see. Someone in the YouTube chat just said, thank you for answering my Lilith questions in the Wednesday Q&A. My pleasure. I am always happy to talk up some history as well. Actually, like I said, since I'm in that order of gamer, historian, and tech journalist, obviously I like talking about video games and history more than I like talking about tech. Even though a lot of people just love hearing my stuff on tech. So my pleasure on that. Love talking, especially more occult history. It's always a real joy, even though sometimes I do walk with trepidation when I talk about that, but that's another subject for another time. So, all right, we're going to wrap this baby up. Anyway, great time. Thank you for everybody that jumped on. Thanks to Robin. Thanks to Daniel. And thanks to everybody that was chatting in the YouTube chat. Always a great time hanging out with all of you. I love you guys, gals, and Z's. I will see all of you on the other side.